Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Be sure and shop Soccer90.com for all your soccer gear. FC Dallas, North Texas Soccer Club, U.S. men's national team, women's national team. They got a bunch of new U.S. stuff just this week. And obviously, of course, they got the Messi stuff. Big breaking news there. Messi coming to MLS. Get your gear now if you're into that kind of scene. Check out all the latest stuff. Soccer90.com. Use code 3rd Degree for 20% off at checkout. Some exclusions do apply.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 214. Hey, it's episode 214. Dallas, get it? Of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, I'm Peter. And chatting all things Football Club Dallas. First with my good friend Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Howdy.
Things good in your life, sir?
Still pinching myself every day about Luton.
Yeah, all right. Very good. Have they started construction yet, sir?
Oh, they started the day after, the morning after the playoff final. Yeah, they've already knocked it all down.
Oh, wow. Proper. Excellent. Okay. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, the good Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Man, you guys undersold that reaction. This is the first podcast since they've won and got promoted, Dan. So I was expecting more.
No, we've been on since they've...
Dan was not available last week.
Oh, you know why I'm thinking of that? Because Dan came on the radio show that day.
Right. That's a totally different show than this one.
That's a totally different show. Totally different.
Different station. Different.
It's that different format, different platform.
Right.
Yes. Excellent.
Commercials.
Congratulations, Dan, on the big promotion to the Premier League, the thing you hate more than anything else in the game.
But we'll accept the money.
Gladly. For sure. All right. Well, anything you want to add about Luton going to the Premier League before we move on to other things?
If anyone wants to jump on the bandwagon, it's got some squeaky wheels. Occasionally they fall off, but, it's a fun ride.
It will be a lot of fun to watch next season. No doubt about it. Congratulations to the Hatters. All right. Well, I suppose for the next hour, we're going to do nothing but talk about Messi, Messi, Messi.
That's a different show also.
Oh, is it a different show? You don't want to talk? You don't want to talk about Messi?
I mean, we can a little bit, but we don't cover Messi. We cover FC Dallas.
Okay. Well, I'm always interested in y'all's input on on the biggest breaking news of this country and this sport of all time times 15 times Pele. I'm exaggerating, obviously.
Well, it's fascinating how fast it's causing ripples in the league. You see people already trying to figure out if Dallas will play Inter Miami next year and things like that.
No.
I hate to break it to you. The answer is going to be probably almost certainly going to be no, because of the way the league schedule is currently structured. And granted, of course, they could change it, but you only play half the teams in the other conference. And Dallas has actually played Miami 2 years in a row now. So the odds are actually very low that they would play Miami next year, by my reckoning anyway. So if you're counting on Messi coming to Dallas, I think you're going to be very disappointed.
At least any time in the next 18 months.
Yeah, not next season and not this season.
Well, wait, hold on, Buzz. There is one scenario.
Yeah.
MLS Cup.
Well, the other scenario is Leagues Cup. If both teams were to advance deep enough, I suppose they could meet up.
Oh, I haven't figured that tournament out yet.
Yeah, I haven't either, but, they're both in it, so we'll see what happens.
The first week of August, if FC Dallas finishes first and Miami finishes runners-up in their group, Miami would come to Frisco. There's another scenario further down, like the quarterfinals or semifinals too.
Well, first week of August, it might be right about when he starts playing.
So what you're telling me is there's a chance.
There's a chance his first game ever might be at Dallas in the league's cup. Man, imagine that.
That would be hilarious. How many fingers does Dan Hunt have crossed right now?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot of fingers. He probably went out and had some extra fingers sewn onto his hand just so they could be crossed. Yes.
The biggest question would be how much demand would there be? Would you try and move the game to the Cotton Bowl or to AT&T? Because that thing in Frisco only holds, just 19,000, right? So If you've
Yeah, I
got
saw-
How much the phrase in the lease would even allow it, or how
Yeah.
much money it would cost them to do
Yeah,
it.
I saw you tweet that earlier today, Buzz, and I didn't want to be that guy. But there's two things holding that up. One, can they do that? Now, maybe a Leagues Cup game they can because in the lease with the county and the school district, there's some allowance for something non-MLS league related that would allow them to do it. But I also, you smartfully tweeted out the suggestion that they should hold a game against Miami, a league game against Miami at the Cotton Bowl during the fair.
Yeah.
But that could never happen for two reasons. One is it would have to happen after both the UT Texas game and the Grambling game because they use that for those football games. And after both those games, that field is a disaster.
Well, can you do it before? Do it early in the...
No, because they wouldn't. No, there's no way UT Texas would let a soccer game be played on that field before that giant spectacle happens.
Well, they already do. They play that Club America game down there every...
During the fair?
I think it's right around then, right? Isn't it?
Oh,
Before it.
Slightly before, perhaps.
well, we'll see what happens.
I'm just saying, money talks, bro. There's ways to make all these things happen.
I don't disagree with you. I would think it's more likely it would get moved to the Death Star than the Cotton Bowl.
Oh yeah,
Well,
sure.
or even if it's outside of the fair, maybe it's the Cotton Bowl. I question about the contract situation, and I also wonder if that's a smart move because you spent all this time building up this thing up in Frisco, and then the one opportunity you've got the biggest player in the world come, and then you abandon it. Seems like really bad messaging.
Well, yes and no.
Are you saying it's a typical FC Dallas move?
Well, I don't know. I guess I have to think about it a little bit more. I hadn't thought of it in this way. I don't know, Buzz. I just don't know if that's the right thing to do. I think you should play that game in your home.
Well, I just think there's some transcendent value to him in terms of market penetration, both with soccer fans and non-soccer fans. And if you are, there's something to be said, of course, for capping the amount of people that can see him because it creates artificial demand in a sense. But on the other hand, one of the reasons why he's coming here and people around the league are willing to pay all this money for him to come here is because of the impact it can have in your market, the draw it can have and the attention it can draw and the amount of people in the last, day and a half just on the FC Dallas side of things saying, oh, when do they play Dallas? Now I'm going to a Dallas game has been, pretty, rapid fire on social medias and such. So, you don't want to not take advantage of that in the first season, maybe years 2 and 3, sure, play up in Frisco, but maybe year 1, trying to take advantage of that, trying to take advantage of the hype. If you get Jerry involved, the hype will be unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't remember whether the Cowboys are a Nike team or an Adidas team. I can't remember, but
Nike.
They are. Yeah. Okay. So I just think that when you have a transcendent moment like this, Messi only has one first game in Dallas. So I would think there'd be an opportunity there to expand it way beyond the normal.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. Messi is about to prove my long-held theory that it has very little to do with location and all to do with product. And because, and this hasn't happened in a while, but for a long time, people would bitch about the team playing up in Frisco. And I would say, look, if Barcelona was playing in Frisco, you would run up the tollway to go watch that team week in and week out. It's a product issue, not a location issue. And that's about what is literally almost exactly the same scenario over in Florida with Fort Lauderdale being almost equally distant from downtown Miami as Frisco is from downtown Dallas. And that place is going to be bonkers sold out week in and week out now that Messi's up there, which, again, proves what we've all said along. It is product, not location.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But in this particular case, it wasn't the location, it's the volume, limiting it to 19,000 seats instead of, 80,000 seats or 90,000 seats or whatever you can fit into the Cotton Bowl or the AT&T. That's all.
So let's run with that for a second. If, in fact, they decided they wanted to play Messi's first game for Inter against Dallas in a league game or a Leagues Cup game, whatever it is, as long as it's a game that has value, has meaning in it, Do you think they would sell out the Cotton Bowl?
Yeah, I think they probably would.
92,000 people.
Yeah, because the Cotton Bowl is positioned to really take advantage of not only the normal FC Dallas and normal soccer audience, but also the East Dallas Latino audience. So I think it would actually sell out faster than AT&T would.
Do you think they could sell out the Death Star?
Yeah, because then Jones would get involved, and there would be a hype factor from that. The problem with that one, of course, is the field size is not sufficient and all that kind of stuff. You could play a game there, but it's pretty much an aberration kind of game. Just the first time, it depends on when we're talking about it. Like if it's a year from now, maybe people are used to it. But if the first time is for some bizarre reason, like in the League's Cup or in the playoffs this year, I mean,
like really early in his time in the league.
Yeah, and the hype would be super high. I mean, listen, I'm not in the business of that kind of stuff. I just think that like the instant reaction. I mean, Miami going from 1 million followers to 5 million followers overnight. Yeah, I mean, Messi's ridiculous. Actually not even signed yet. And he's got hundreds of millions of followers, and people around this country, are going crazy about it. And I think that in this town, I think the first time in, I probably would be a big deal. I mean, remember what Beckham did the times he came here. And granted, those games were in Frisco,
and he didn't even play the first one.
Right, I know. I remember that. I used to say that.
That's actually part of the official list on the site, Buzz.
Yeah,
that falls into that year.
So should be the St. Louis thing. That needs to go on there.
Yeah, I saw somebody recommend that we add that. We'll get into the St. Louis thing here in a second. I'm interested in Dan's perspective in all of this as somebody not from here, but also somebody that's been here and been a fan. Your perspective of the enormity or lack thereof or overhype of the Messi thing coming to America.
I mean, it's a huge deal. Teams are reaching out to people to sell tickets. I mean, Chicago sold 7,000 for their game. I think was it Charlotte maybe that just shipped an extra 10,000 in one day. In Dallas, I think I'm a little hesitant. Well, firstly, like you mentioned, played Miami 2 years in a row. Probably not getting them at home next year. And we only saw a couple of years ago when Cristiano Ronaldo was at the height of his powers. Real Madrid only sold 50,000 at the Cotton Bowl. Don't get me wrong. There is a decent-sized Argentine population. When Messi came here last time, I don't think they quite sold out the Cotton Bowl. But not the Cotton Bowl, sorry, AT&T.
Hell, the Barbero family could sell out the Cotton Bowl just by themselves. That's a personal joke, sorry.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is.
There's some friends of mine. They're a giant Argentinian family that lives here in town. There's more Barberos you could possibly count.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the league, whether it's just kind of like a weird sideshow. I keep seeing people saying, it's like when Beckham came. I think, Beckham was the year before I moved out, or actually, no, I was in Connecticut at the time. So I never really, I didn't get to see that portion of it here. I don't know. Ultimately, it's a still kind of crappy team that's going to get an excellent player, and how much of a difference that really makes.
Well, I do agree that if you're talking about a year from now, or more likely 2 years from now, then it doesn't make sense. I'm only talking about the instant. So if it manages to happen in the end of this season, then I think there's something to be said for.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Well, it is not a deal not yet done. And Andy actually read the article to me and translated it for me, because Google Translate of the Spanish article was pretty crappy. And it's pretty clear. I mean, this is the one thing about this whole thing that nobody's really talking about after yesterday, because I think everybody's making the assumption this is going to happen, which is probably true. But this is the one red flag in all of this that is lurking around in the back of my head. And I know this is pretty stereotypical of me to think of it this way. This is clearly not his first option. Like, he really wants to go back to Barcelona, and he wants to end his career in Barcelona. They just can't make it happen, so he's going to do this instead. And that worries me in terms of how he treats this both on and off the field.
Well, I was just reading a quote from Tevez, who said that, part of the reason why it wasn't going to work at Barcelona was because Messi would have been the bad guy, in the sense of like all these other players would have to take pay cuts and he would have caused a massive disruption to them. And that was part of why he wasn't interested in that. And then just, being ready for the next phase and owning Miami, and Tevez thinks he made a really good choice. Implication being that they're fairly tight. So, it's not the first choice, but Messi doesn't necessarily strike me as a guy who's kind of half-assed it. He didn't go to PSG and just walk around. He plays pretty hard.
No, but that's a very different deal than coming and playing on right now, this is funny. As soon as this got announced or started leaking out yesterday morning, all I could think about was how awful Miami was earlier this season. Remember how we talked about that maybe one of the worst teams we've ever seen in this league?
Yeah, they're bad.
Now, that was Phil Neville, and I'm sure they're going to add Busquets, and they're going to add some other people in Tata Martinez, who's going to fix a lot of that stuff. I'm sure they're going to get significantly better very, very quickly. But this is a very different situation than Lionel Messi's ever had, as far as I can think of in his career, what he's stepping into.
Yeah, it's not as good. I imagine there'll be lots of people that'll take less money than they could to want to go there, especially
Picture being Victor Uroa right now.
Yeah, nice, right? That guy, he's won the lottery in a way.
Because totally won it.
They'll need budget players that can produce and perform. So they'll need guys like Uroa to fill in their roster, a guy that's capable of being a starter. He's getting a little long in the tooth, but he can start games, for sure still.
Yeah.
Still has to lean hard into their academy because they'll be so top-heavy, bottom-heavy. It's an interesting question. They've also got some dead weight they've jettisoned, some DPs that were absolutely horrible, some of the worst DPs I've ever seen. So this is going to get them on the right track. LAFC's proven that you can spend well above the cap and get away with it if you're smart about it. And I imagine that Inter's probably going to try and do the same thing.
Boy, imagine, is it going to surprise anybody that Joseph Martinez's game just suddenly goes back to his Atlanta days overnight?
Right. Yeah,
that switch is going to flip super fast. You guys watch.
Well, I imagine there'll be a whole boatload of players that'll play a lot better than they ever have before because they don't want to be the one jettisoned when the guy shows up. They're going to want to stick around.
Yeah. Well, again, I've spent a not small amount of time imagining being Victor at this particular moment in time and how weird his life has taken a twist where now he's going to be lining up in the midfield with the greatest player of all time.
Well, Breck Shea, they let him go.
Oh, that's right. Breck was playing in the soccer tournament a week ago.
I know he was. Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. Well, okay. Well, we'll keep everybody tabbed on that. We'll talk a lot about it on the radio show on Saturday as well. And if anybody wants to get more into it, because I got 1,000 kajillion thoughts about this.
Yeah.
Hey, well, doing some cross promotion. Where's the radio show going to be this weekend?
I'm so glad you asked, Dan. We are doing a Champions League final watching party at Soccer Spectrum in Richardson, which I believe is walking distance from Dan's home, which means either before or after you can go to Dan's house and take a nap because you're so drunk from all the beer you're going to drink. So Soccer Spectrum is just off of Campbell and 75, just east of there. It's a great place. They got a ton of televisions. We're going to do our show live from there. Lots of, by the way, the pizza at this place is really good, and I'm a bit of a pizza snob, so I like the pizza there a lot. They got all different kinds of beer, and it should be a great time. It's free. It's free admission. You don't have to pay to get in. The doors open at 8:30 in the morning, so feel free to come watch the game and heckle the radio show while we're there. Thank you, Dan, for that opportunity to do that.
Oh, how cool! Yeah, don't worry.
And hopefully Buzz doesn't edit it out.
Nope.
All right, so we've talked about Messi, we've talked about Luton, we've talked about my stupid radio show. Let's talk Football Club Dallas. And since the last time we talked, it's been a very weird 7 days, Buzz and Dan, as we have dealt again with Dallas having significant injury issues and missing players for all kinds of things. First up, the loss against Nashville at home is a weird one because they lost the game, but you know what? The team, considering all things considered, the team didn't look that crappy.
Yeah, as coach like to point out, the last couple of games, goes back to something Oscar Pereira used to always say, is that sometimes you have to ignore the goals because there's a lot of flukiness that happens in soccer goals. And you have to just look at the game. And his analysis of the game, and I think he was correct, was that the team played really well. And if you want an example of that, you can look at this Nashville game. And if you buy into the XG stat, and I'm not a overseller of that stat, but it can be a good metric for a general philosophy about like, the team play very well. FC Dallas had a 1.5 XG compared to the 0.9 for Nashville. Well, what that means is, in general terms, Dallas played a pretty effective game. They created enough chances and so on and so forth in order to be in that game. They had enough key passes. They had enough opportunities to score, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the scoring wasn't good enough. And you can go back to what has bit them a little bit recently, which is the relatively poor finishing they've been doing. For example, in this game, they had 13 shots, right? So they had, 14 shots. So they put themselves in an opportunity, to get a shot towards the goal 14 times, but only 3 of them got on target, right? So that's not good enough. That's not what this team does. This team is a low shot, high convergence team. So this is a breakdown in terms of why they didn't win the game, was this poor finishing. In this particular game, Alan Velasco had a relatively decent game, statistically speaking, but had a poor game in terms of his actual production came of it. For example, he had 6 shots and he didn't get any of them on goal. And 5 of 6 of them came from outside the goal box. And in particular, a large number of the shots from this team in this game came from outside the goal box. So they did not do what they usually do. Usually this team has up until recently, maybe this week even, they've led the league in their percentage of shots coming in the box. The closer you get, the better your finishing chances are, the higher percentage of your finishing chances. So while they did play well, basically box to box, the last couple of games they've not played well in the box with the final opportunity, and that's why they haven't had a couple of good results this week. So you have to balance the analysis of you played relatively well with the analysis of the object of the game is to score and win the game. So those two things were disconnected, but it was overall you have to be relatively happy with the play given the number of people that they're missing, because they're still missing a massive amount of people, including pretty much everybody in midfield.
Yeah, and included in that, not just the people that are missing, but the players that they had to use to replace them.
Yeah.
The idea that Ibby's playing right back makes my head hurt. But then to see Endeley start and Nolan start again,
Yeah. Endeley is a player who they drafted with the idea that he was going to convert to right back, but he's been playing so well for North Texas and in training at wing that they okay using him there. They're so okay using him there and so not okay yet to use him in defense that they basically went with this formation so they could use him as a right midfielder with a very heavy defensive first player behind him. And Ibiaga in that game played a very, very simple, basic stay-at-home game. And Dallas went down the left heavily, so heavily that Obrian only had like 20-something touches, and Endeley only had I want to say 12 or something. They funneled heavily the other way. And given how well Obrian's playing, it's perhaps a shame that he was not involved more because of this formation, perhaps, because he wasn't in there and they didn't score. So it's weird that we're at a point where they're like, man, it's really a shame that Hadir Obrian, of all people, didn't get more of the ball because he's one of the best players right now.
I mean, you think about, there were 3 key errors in the game, right? The one probably on the attacking side for FC Dallas was that breakaway when Ferreira received the ball, just intercepted the ball in midfield, made the run up. It was like a 3-on-1. Obrian's waiting there for a layoff, and Ferreira takes a touch too many and runs into the one defender. How many times in the past have we thought, oh, why didn't he just pass it to Obrian? Normally it's the other way around. Why did Obrian take 5 extra touches? Why did he run it out of play? Why did he take the shot from the impossible position? And now you're kind of screaming for Obrian to get the ball instead.
What a weird place we're in.
Yeah. I wish I could figure out, did somebody bump up against him and accidentally hit a button that's been hidden on his under his hair all this time or something that flipped a switch? I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. The pass last night and the St. Louis makeup, like that's
Yeah,
and that's not the first time he's done that of late. Like didn't he have like a killer pass for a goal a few weeks ago? They were all like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, at this point, he's second on the team in chances created, and Jesus is first, but Jesus has taken all the set plays. So really, Obrian is the most important player on the team, honestly, in terms of creating offensive opportunities right now. And it's really a combination of things. Number one, the guy's got a great personality and he's got a great work rate. He didn't give up. But at the beginning of the season, he probably felt like he was completely entrenched on the bench behind Areola, and they brought in Kamungo, so he's feeling pressure in that way. And he probably was trying to do too much. And you remember, a coach, I think, probably continued to have faith with him and kept working with him. And you remember, right before all this great play started happening, I talked about how great he looked in training. And we all scoffed and laughed and like, wow, crazy is that? Well, since I said that, he's been on fire. And not like I did anything. I just stand there watching it happen, and you have to give the guy credit, right? He didn't give up on himself. There have been guys who have, and he did not, and the coach did not. It reminds me of Cobra when I was like, this guy stinks, and Lucha never gave up on him. At the end of that season, he was a contributing guy. Sometimes it just takes a while, so credit to him. The main difference isn't effort. The main difference is connection, that he's now integrated and playing on the same page as other players, which is why, as Dan said, it was such a bummer that Jesus didn't pass that ball to him, because when he's involved in the play, like the one goal he did score was a beautiful team goal. It finished with Obrian, right? So it's like that interaction and connectivity is what matters. And when he's integrated and involved, he's plenty good enough.
Yeah. Well, it sucked to lose a home game, especially against Nashville. But I guess my point is that considering how damaged the team is, it probably lessened the pain considering how well the team looked with all the extra pieces in there. So that took us to Wednesday and the weird scenario of has this ever happened in the league before? Has anybody figured that out or stated that? Is this the first time they've ever restarted a game from weeks prior?
Well, in my head, Dallas had one where they played the next day. But, the difference on this one is that if you remember, think back to that week that happened, is St. Louis had a game on Tuesday and Dallas had a game on Wednesday. And
it was Open Cup, wasn't it?
I think so. And they didn't want to play on Sunday and then have to play a day and a half later. So they decided to postpone it instead. So I don't know. I'm sure that there has been. The league's been around too long for there not to have happened before. But, like we said, usually it happens the next day. It's just not. In this case, was really weird.
Dan, were you there, Dan, at the St. Louis thing yesterday?
Yeah.
What was the scene like there? Because you really couldn't tell from the TV.
Oh, it was empty. There was, there were a few. Yeah. If there was over 1,500 people there, that would have been a shock.
Okay. Well, that's not to be unexpected. I mean, it was who wants to go watch 40 minutes?
People. Yeah, there's that, exactly that. They had one merch stand open, only a couple of concessions. No new ticket sales. It was never gonna. Oh, plus there was a storm right to the side of the stadium that I had to drive through rain and thunder to get to the stadium. There was another storm on the other side of the stadium. So, I wouldn't blame anyone for just going, you know what? I'm just going to watch it on TV for 40 minutes instead.
Well, one thing about the Dallas audience, the Dallas fan base, is that it does not deal well with events that aren't on the schedule. Whether it be Open Cup games or makeup games or even playoff games. Although the most recent one, they did a really good job of marketing it. But most other times when they have games that pop up without being penciled in from the beginning of the year, no one knows and no one comes,
It was funny. I wish I had grabbed a screen capture of this. One of the guys from one of the supporters groups, like what is it? I don't remember who it was, tweeted a photo of his map, an Apple map of going to the game from where he lives, which is on the other side of the airport, like maybe Westlake or somewhere in that area, Keller maybe, or somewhere past that. And he was commenting about the fact that it was going to take him 45, 50 minutes to drive there, and the game was only 40 minutes long. But what I thought was interesting from that photo is is that if in fact this just proves out another thing about location that I'm sorry, I don't mean to beat everybody down with this, but if the game had been in a stadium in downtown Dallas, it would have actually taken him, because it map, by the way, was covered in red traffic lines because traffic was so bad at that time of day. It would have taken him almost twice as long to get to downtown Dallas as it would have to gotten to Frisco for the game. And my point being is there is no perfect place for a stadium in this area, in my opinion, because everybody has to drive a long way to get everywhere for the most part. Sorry, that was just my observation.
Yeah, that's a fair rant. I mean, I admit that I did not go for that very reason, that the drive would have been longer each way than the game was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's a poor excuse, but it was such a weird, disjointed thing. Like, even watching it on TV, it felt really weird, you know, because it was like, it started with a goal kick, you know, and it was, you know,
started 5 minutes early too.
Yeah, it was basically.
Oh, did it really?
Wow.
Yeah, I was still trying to eat when they kicked off.
Oh, wow.
You know, it was just a weird. It wasn't even like a real even training session. It was like a half. It was just like the last section of a training session, like a 45-minute, you know, scrimmage almost. Some people were complaining, I saw on Twitter about, and various social medias, about the intensity of the FC Dallas, but we knew going in that was going to be the case. And Coach Dan, you remember, Coach talked about it on the media call, how they knew that St. Louis, or assumed that St. Louis would come out as they always do, really high pressure, high intensity, and so their whole ball game was to absorb that, you know, and not break, and then get them after that, and they did. You know, so that plan worked to perfection. But, you know, no one needed a sub. No one needs to rotate or have time off, because it really was just 40 minutes. So it wasn't even a whole half. So, you know, it was hard to really get your teeth into it as a real event. You know, I didn't even bother with the three things, because the two pieces were so disjointed and so far apart that things like a 90-minute game didn't come into play. So,
well, I mean, nothing. You know, I mean, you could happily have not watched the first half an hour of the resumed game, and you would have seen every piece of action still.
Yeah, it was a dreadful 35 minutes before the goal was scored.
And it was funny. I was talking with Marco Farfan after the game, and sort of asked me, you know, what did you go into expect? Nico was expecting all this chaos and hectic pressing that just really wasn't there. It was a lot of kind of like, well, do you want the ball? Do we want the ball? Who wants the ball? Can somebody shoot? No, okay, we'll just take it out for a throw in.
Yeah, I felt bad.
Like, yeah, you know, you'd expect it to be. They're playing half a game. They're a high intensity team. They're going to double it up, right? Because they can just go for it, not have to worry about, you know, conserving energy over 90 minutes, and it just wasn't there.
In the end, like, you have to look at these two pieces of a game as an opportunity that Dallas took advantage of, because this is not an easy team to beat. St. Louis City is really good, and you just got 3 points against them. And I honestly feel like the break, like splitting it into two pieces, because Dallas fought and clawed to keep that thing at 0-0 over the first section. And the second section made it really difficult for anybody to do their game. And Dallas is practiced at diffusing play and softening play and killing play. And that's what they did in this game. This is the Nico way. And then capitalizing late. And again, that's what they did. They said they pressed the accelerator, and they played in rapid transition. We talk about it all the time with this team, that they're at their very best when they turn you over, and no matter where in the field it is, and they rapidly attack back the other direction. It's not a counterattack. It's just rapid transition. And they were at their best doing that. And it's their ball game. It's the way they play. And if people don't enjoy that, I'm not sure what to tell you, because that's what this coach is going to do. You know, his mandate when he was hired was fix the defense, and he's done that. And you're looking at one of the best teams in the league defensively right now. Even though we think the defense is not as good as last year and could be a lot better, you know, it's still this overall team concept that keeps games low scoring and keeps them tight. And Jesus is taking advantage of that and winning a lot of games. He's leading the league in game-winning goals, because he's the leading scorer for this team, and this team wins games late. And so he's, you know, he'll have 3 game-winning goals now after the 80th minute. It's incredible. I mean, imagine if he was actually in the box at that time, how many he might have. But you take it when they come, and you take these points, and you take it as a really weird thing, but you got the points, and that's what matters.
All right, well, this is going to lead into what I think is the big kind of question mark that came out of yesterday's 40 minutes, and I'll get to that in a second, which is, but we should at least acknowledge that this team is in serious trouble if Jesus gets injured or is out for any period of time, because nobody else is scoring for the most part on this team except for him.
Well, we've been ranting about that for a couple of weeks now, that he's the only one on the team that can score. And it's right now it's highlighted by the fact that there's not much service from midfield. And I talked about, I asked Coach actually directly, like, is Jesus coming back and doing these things where he comes back to midfield because he's not getting the ball? And he said, no, actually he is getting the ball. The opportunities are the same. The XG is the same. It's just not coming out of midfield. It's coming from somewhere else. And they're playing this double pivot. And the last week or so, they're playing this 4-4-2. There's two sixes back there, and he's playing with another high striker next to him. Well, where's it coming from? They're going around the wide parts and then coming in. It's not coming from the midfield. So they've just shifted to where it's coming from. But it's still all going to Jesus because you're right, no one else on this team can score. The number 2 leading scorer is probably Obrian now, and right after that it's Nico Tafari.
Yeah, by the way, if somebody else did score, it was a defender again last night. I think there have been more goals by defenders this season than there have been attacking players, if you add up all the goals.
Well, not Jesus, but...
Well, no. I think if you were to add up Tafari and Ibi and Farfan, like they may be close to how many Jesus has scored this season.
Possibly, but Velasco has 2 and Obrian has 2.
I think Garrett... There's a 4th defender that scored as well this season. I'm trying to think if it was who it was.
Martinez has 1.
Jose, yeah.
Yeah, so Buzz, you said a name that I think is at least in my head from watching it, the talking point out of this game, and very concerning. Now, maybe there's more to this story that was Dan can share afterwards, since you got to go to the locker room and you were actually there. But tell me I should not be concerned about your $8 million Argentinian wonder kid crying as he gets subbed out of a game that is only 40 minutes long.
Oh, that was a really odd moment. I don't know of anything beyond what we witnessed, which was it sure heck to me looked like he was crying.
Because he was playing poorly.
He has been playing poorly for a while. And I thought he was playing poorly again in this game, and he got subbed out. And I imagine that to him, it feels like he got subbed 30 minutes into the first half of a game, and that only happens unless you're injured. That only happens when you're complete trash or the coach has completely screwed up something tactically and you're getting annihilated. Well, the coach didn't screw up something tactical. He only got subbed because he was playing like crap. Now, you could say the reason he got subbed was to bring on the center back and go 5-4-1 and kill the game since they were up. That's true. But you could have picked multiple players to come off. And the thing is they're not pulling off Jesus. The way Obrian's playing, he's not coming out, right? The Quignon-Cerrillo combo in this particular game is not coming out. So for them to decide that you're the worst player, we're bringing you out, is not good. And we forget sometimes that he's a kid. Now, maybe there's something off the field happening that I have no idea about. It's entirely possible. It just seems like maybe it was like, frustration and emotion on his part that he knows he's not playing bad, and his teammates are yelling at him fairly frequently right now. And the coach is pulling him out pretty quick. So
pretty nasty moment between him and Jesus when Jesus was out wide and Allen tried to play a ball behind the defender, and Jesus did not look like he liked that. Although I'm not 100% sure Allen made the wrong decision there. But anyway, Dan, do you have any live from the scene reporting on what actually went down or what was the result of all of that?
No, you seem fine in the locker room afterwards.
I'm hoping it's just the emotion of the moment. He sees adds all that up in his head, and he gets upset about it. As I said, it's important to remember that he really is a kid.
Yeah.
He's dealing with things at a much higher level of pressure than you or I did at 18, 19 years old. It's a different world that he lives in than we have know anything about. So I can't blame him for having a moment. I'm 52 years old and I occasionally have moments. It's just these things happen, and he just happened to do it in a place where people could see him on TV. And if Dan's right and he's fine 5 minutes later, then that's great. That's actually good. So nobody seemed to go over to him and say anything to him. So I imagine they probably wanted to just give him some space.
All right. Well, then I shan't worry about it no more. By the way, between the loss and the win, Dallas retains their now. It's officially the Dallas trophy position of 4th place. Although they're tied on points with LAFC, but LAFC has many games in hand. They've only played 13 games and have 26 points, which is a good rate. Now, they're about to get into the grinder as a club. They've got like 2 games a week now through August, is it? Or some ridiculous amount of time they're going to play a stunning amount of football.
Yeah, that's a team that I wouldn't be surprised would play a bunch of spares on the League's Cup just to get out of that weight of that thing, because they had their hands full trying to win CONCACAF again. So yeah.
So Dallas, as I said, in 4th place, tied with LAFC on 26 points and a points per game of 1.53, if anybody cares. Dallas now is 5-2-2 at home. One of the things that I wondered about this game, Buzz, is the fact that with all the weird roster rules, exceptions that deal with postponed, restarted games, was the fact that Leggett wasn't available because he's hurt. And then it's the curious case of Paxton Pomykal, who I guess we can give him a bye and say he was in this game when it started, but it's now, how long has that dude been missing?
Boy, it's starting to get worrying how long it's been.
Was it the Austin game was the last time he played?
Dan, you know more. What's the timeline on that?
It was the Houston game.
The Houston game. All right, so he's only missed 4 games since then, or 3.5 games.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
God, it feels longer than that.
Yeah.
Well, he was rested in the Vancouver game. And he... Let me backtrack. So he subbed out of the Austin game on May 13th. He sat out the Vancouver game on the 17th, came back for the Houston game on the 20th.
He started the Houston game?
Yeah.
Okay.
He supposedly injured his quad in training the middle of that week, and then he's missed the games since then.
Okay.
Well, Coach says that Ariel and Leggett might be back for the Austin game, which is basically 2 weeks from today. So they're neither one of them, it sounds like, going to be back for the Portland game. So you're looking at Austin at best before you get both those guys back. And then when he said that, he skipped right over Paxton. So I'm assuming Paxton must be longer than that. So I don't know when we're going to see him, honestly. It's kind of like they're being really hazy about time gone right now, maybe because they don't want people to realize it might be a while. Like Tuamasi, right? Apparently he's walking around in a walking boot. And depending on who I've talked to, I'm hearing anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months that he might be out, depending on how fast he heals. So Paxton, we don't know at all. We're not hearing anything other than, like, apparently it's this quad hamstring. Obviously there's a relation there,
So Tuamasi's an ankle injury?
Yeah. Yeah, he's in a walking boot.
The Paxton thing worries me because not to have Dallas sports area PTSD, but not that I actually care about baseball, but it does have this weird Jacob deGrom vibe where, a guy is missing because he's out injured, and then suddenly one day it's like, oh, we're just going to let him sit out a few more weeks, and then literally the next day you find he's having season-and-a-half ending surgery. And I'm worried that this is what is going to transpire with Paxton. Is they're gonna call an emergency press conference or some just like passing reference in the hallway where Nick, he had to have surgery and he's out for the rest of the season. That's what I'm really worried about.
Well, usually they put out a press release when they have surgery. So if he had surgery, they'll tell us. But if he doesn't have surgery, they're just shutting him down. They probably won't say anything for quite a while because they don't want everybody to know they're shutting him down.
Yeah. I mean, if it's just an innocuous quad injury, it just feels like this has been going on way too long for it just to be a nagging quad injury.
Well, there's some hammy involvement at this point, too. So, and unfortunately, these are all related to the thing that was this bigger problem 2 years ago. So you're always worried about Paxton, and when anything in that central area, you kind of you try to be really careful. So hopefully that's all it is. Hopefully they're just being really careful. We're doing a lot of speculating because they're being really quiet about it. We don't know.
Yeah, well, especially when you make the note that when they go through the list, they don't even mention him now.
Yeah, he just was like, it's like, oh, you think you might get some people back for this game? He goes, well, we might have Ariel and Leggett for Austin. And I was like, I had to look up when that was. And then just that was it. He didn't mention anybody else.
It's weird because I'd asked about replacing Paxton and Leggett and how the rules let him do that. And he just kind of went off on a bit of a tangent and then said, we may get them back for Austin, and that was kind of it. No Siki, no Paxton, no Emma, no really anyone. I mean, Christ, the injury list that big.
So, Buzz, I'm glad Dan brought that up. I should have asked you back when we were talking about the Nashville game. How do you feel about Endeley and Nolan Norris's performance, own goal aside?
Yeah.
From what we've seen from those kids.
Well, okay, fine. Listen, people always want to tell me that like these kids, that kid sucked. Well, of course he did. He's 8. Smith's 19. Norris is 18. Endeley's never played a minute coming out of Indiana. He was a low round draft pick. Of course they weren't good. Everything has to be taken in context. Endeley did not get enough touches really to get much of a judge on him, but I've seen him play for North Texas, and he has some things that are interesting, as a player that could be developed. I think he could provide as much as Siki does for this team going forward, whether it be eventual as a right back option or if it continues to be a wing option. The fact that he actually is usable at wing is a bonus. That wasn't really the plan when they drafted him. They were kind of going to sort of see where he fit, and it's a bonus that you can use him as a wing after all. Norris is interesting because all they asked him to do was keep it really simple, and he did that. Yes, the own goal is terrible, but the thing I take away from the Norris performances is that he's a kid that was way in over his head playing a position he's hardly ever played before, and he stood up. It wasn't great in the first game. It was fine. The second game, he has the own goal, and he shook it off, and he played. Lots of guys would fold, either just in the first game when he was struggling a little bit, relatively speaking, or in the second game when he had the old go. Those are massive chances for kids would just fold tent and just be worthless and get run over from there. And he didn't do that. That kid, I've talked about his brain since he was 13 years old. He is tough, mentally sharp, and super savvy about the game, and is a really good passer. He's shown that he's going to be useful to this club in way more ways than we thought he was going to be. Is it now? No, of course it's not. But his mental toughness he showed this week, to me, is just off the charts, and that's going to be so good for him and this club over the long run. And even Smith, who I was never that high on signing in the first place, I thought his performance at right back was pretty good. He showed some verticality. He's more of a Brian Reynolds-ish, run the line, get up and down kind of guy. He's not going to sit deep and defend really well. He'll be more like a Giovanni in the sense it's all about the offense. But he actually did a relatively decent job on defense. He got turned on that one triple team when there were 2 other guys to help him, and none of them stopped the guy. And he's not the one that didn't track somebody that ended up in a goal. So, all those kids, I thought, given the context and the circumstances, played in a positive way. And that's what all I ever want when someone's making their MLS debut, is to not get wrecked.
So that means the team is now off until the 12th this weekend, when they have to go to Portland and face off against the Timbers, the Trees, who are in 11th place and not having their best season. So a good opportunity on the road for Dallas to get more points, who, by the way, currently are 2-3-3 on the road.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, obviously Paz is back. No one really needs to rotate because this midweek game was basically just like a practice. So it's not, everyone should be feeling great, other than people that are, of course, actually healthy. You still have, your midfield problem, but you can just play the same 4-4-2. You can go with Edwin and Facundo in the middle, both of whom perform better in that combo pairing than they do by themselves. Farfan's obvious. I'm sure Velasco's obvious. I'm sure Obrian is obvious. The only question will be, do you use Obrian up top as the striker next to Jesus, or do you use Jimenez in that spot and put Obrian in midfield? If you put Obrian up top, who plays right mid? That might be a big ask on Endeley to do that again, especially because the only other person you have at right back is, again, Giovanni Jesus, who, as we know, does not play anywhere near as good on the road. So you might be looking at, okay, what can I do defensively? Because this coach, again, defuses the game on the road, kills the game, plays defensive. Might we be looking at a Sebastian oh my gosh, Ibiaga. Wow. Ibiaga at right back again with somebody in front of him of a more midfielderish kind of vibe, or maybe a Sam Junk on the wrong side or whatever. So still some decisions that have to be made because of the pieces missing, because you still have no Ariel, Leggett, and Sebling or Pomacall, or Tuamasi. Those 5 guys, as far as we know, are still going to be out. There are no signs that any of them are going to be back. So tough struggle for the coach again to try and grind out points.
Sounds like fun, Buzz.
Yeah, it is fun. I think it's fun. I think it's fascinating. I mean, it may not be sexy, but it's fun, you know. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, let's see. What is next up on Buzz's famous run sheet written in red crayon?
Well, did you see where it says Justin Shea and then has a line through it?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the unusual thing about this. Justin Shea is written in red, but there's a black line through it.
Crossed out. Yeah.
Crossed out. His name is crossed out. So I'm just assuming this means that Justin has said thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to, even if I have to go play in a 4th division in Lithuania, I'm going back to Europe.
Well, he didn't, but Coach Nico did. Coach, man, threw cold water all over that idea. Like, somebody flat out asked him, you know, hey, you know, Justin's coming back after the U20. He's going to be a nice addition to the team. And his answer, like in phases, was, number one, the first part of it was, our roster's going to be full. Number 2 was, Justin has to think about his future. Number 3 was, there's probably lots of teams that are interested in him, give or take, whatever, something like that. So Coach poo-pooed entirely the idea that Justin Shea would fit into this roster and be able to help this team. Most specific, not specifically, but hinting around in every way possible that Justin Shea won't be being added to this roster at the end of this month. Ooh, a little storm action here. So it begs the question, you know, they obviously really think that something else is coming. I hear some chatter behind the scenes that they already are negotiating with people. I can't verify that. I'm not reporting anything, but that's just when I hear these things. Sometimes you're like, some of them are pretty legit. You know, it's a little secondhand. It's a little bit like, oh, I know this guy, and he's, you know, put all these things together. If Coach hadn't said anything, I wouldn't necessarily put any credence into these ideas that they're already negotiating with somebody. But you know the scene with Justin well enough. You guys have seen how he's been since he went to Bayern. You know, you've seen how he's reacted to the idea of coming back in general, of being here in general. You've now seen Coach say, I wouldn't really put too much in that, you know. So I just want to prepare everybody for the idea that it now seems to me, reading the tea leaves and listening to Coach, highly, highly unlikely that Justin Shea will be coming back here and to help this team at all.
Well, maybe there's more to that story. Maybe it's just, the way he reacts is frustration that Justin doesn't want to be here, knowing how much they could probably use him, or maybe he doesn't fancy Justin as quality enough to play at this level. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of unknowns.
Yeah, this coach leans veteran, old, and experienced, not young and inexperienced. You know, he has 2 right backs, and you could argue they actually have 5. Between North Texas and this team, they have 5 right backs, you know, and so slotting Justin in there, you know, maybe, you know, at center back, he would be, you would say, oh, he could be 4th. You put him in ahead of Nolan Norris at center back. Yeah, you probably would, except Nolan's a lefty and Shea's a righty. So he's not really necessarily competing with Nolan Norris. He's competing at right back, where you already have Nicosi and Ibiaga substantially ahead of him walking in. So you're talking about trying to add a guy who's going to be 3rd, 4th, 5th at any one of the conversations the day he walks in. You know, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to try and accommodate that. That's what he means by the roster's full. Like the spots he plays, it's full. Yes, they have a roster spot, but they're also talking about, we know they're looking at center backs, right? So probably a left center back. So again, maybe not a direct competition, but still a center back. So like adding that guy would give you 6 center backs. Justin would be 7. You know what I mean? So it's like, it really just doesn't make any sense, you know, on that idea alone. So yeah, big red flags.
All right, and based on the fact that as I sat and watched some of this stuff over the course of the last week and thought, what in the hell is Jesus Jimenez even doing out on the field? Because he doesn't appear to do anything. Is anybody else equally as frustrated as I am that Salt Lake is signing Christian Arango? Because I would love to have that dude on this team.
Well, their roster's pretty thin. I mean, they've had a bunch of guys leave in the last year, so they probably had a lot of available cash.
Yeah.
And Dallas doesn't really, like we've talked about that, right? Dallas is pretty up against it. Even with Toronto playing Jimenez's contract, that in terms of cap, that's what they're playing. Toronto is the cap room. So, they're holding out room, I think, to add this one player. When you have 1.9 million in Jesus, and an $8 million winger, and he spent $2 million in GAM to get Paul, there ain't a lot of room for a striker of that caliber on this roster.
Okay.
That's why you needed an O'Brien on 400.
And I probably should stop real quickly and admit that I failed in my duty as podcast host and picked up on what you dropped there, Buzz, which is, do you know who it is, or do you have any speculation on what they're who they're talking to?
No.
Okay.
Just left center back.
All right.
I mean, I hear lots of rumors, but not all the rumors all fit into what we've been saying since December.
A certain Spanish center back who once played for Real Madrid, who just left PSG.
No. The one the stuff I hear is actually in the late 20s. But I have no idea if that's all just being parroted back to us. If I'm just hearing back the things we're saying, you could get a feedback loop like that sometimes. Like it's possible that what I hear about Justin is just a feedback loop. People heard what Coach said and goes, "Oh, he's got a deal in the works," and then all of a sudden I'm hearing there's a deal in the works. You know what I mean? So it could be that what I'm hearing on center back is just a feedback loop on what we've been saying since December, that he need a left center back. But granted, in the spring, both Coach and Zanata said that was true, in spring training. And then they said, we're going to have to wait till the summer. So nothing has really changed beyond the injuries, and we talked last week about the idea that I don't think you derail your plan just because you're short an 8. You can grind like you are now without one.
Okay. Dan, you've been awfully quiet. Do you have any desire to talk about how you feel about the team at this point?
Messi.
Okay. Well played, sir.
You want to talk about Messi more?
A couple of call-ups you want to talk about, Buzz, here on the run sheet?
Yeah, just credit to Bernard Kamungo, who's been called in by Tanzania. Abilene's own, yeah. Now, he is a U.S. citizen, but obviously he's still eligible for Tanzania because that's where he was born. So super cool for him. I mean, they're way
except
way
for
down.
that flight.
Yeah, except for the flight. They have one game in their AFCON or whatever it is, qualifying that they've got going on, that I guess that's what he's being called in for. So that's super cool for him that he's going to get that opportunity. Now, they're way down, like 150th or something like that. So they're not very good, but still super cool that your country calls you up. I don't care what your country is. I think it's awesome for you. And then Carl Sante, who's plays for North Texas, was called in for Haiti again for their Nations League. He's been called in before. That's not news that he's in that mix, but it's just kind of cool that again, it shows you where Haiti is in the rankings too, that you have a guy playing for North Texas SC that plays for that team. I think there's something to be said for the ability for North Texas to develop or have these guys that are playing for these countries that are, these not necessarily these Mexico or the United States, but still have value in international play, and super awesome for these kids that they're getting that opportunity. I couldn't be happier for them.
Okay. Well, good stuff. Anything else we need to dip our toes into before I go eat my dinner sandwich?
Well, I have two things. The first is that I went like frame by frame on the Mukhtar goal, and that was not a handball. He brought that thing down clean.
Okay.
Yeah, and that dude can ball out. I told a story about on one of my burns about going to that game and having people sitting behind me who had a guy was his first ever soccer game that I think he'd ever even seen his entire life. I don't mean pro, I mean like soccer ever. I think he had no idea about anything. And the dude that brought him to the game was a self-professed soccer fan who then proceeded to tell him about all about soccer with about a 75% inaccuracy rate, which was making my brain hurt. But they were talking trash to Mukhtar, who did some of his Mukhtar things where he's delaying the game and doing gamesmanship and stuff. And they're yelling at him, telling him he stinks. And I'm like, dude, that dude does not stink. He's the reigning MVP. You're out of your mind if you think that dude stinks. He's just really, really good. And then the second thing was we talked the other day about the idea that the way forward might be this double pivot idea, this what sometimes might be a 4-2-3-1 when you have an Ensebling or Leggett who's healthy. Right now it's a 4-4-2 where you have Facundo and Edwin playing sort of next to each other, or Paxton can be one of those two guys that can be more of a 6'8" look. The two things is, one is that North Texas continues to use that look, which tells you a little bit about the organizational idea that maybe the whole organization is changing over to that look. And the second was, I asked coach about Facundo and that jump forward and improvement in his playing in that double pivot. And he goes, yeah, I guess I was being a dummy, which I thought was really funny. And he's like, sometimes it takes you a while to recognize these things, how much better it is, and so I think there's a good chance that you're going to see a lot of that double pivot look, whether it be those two formations sort of going forward over the stretch, and we won't see Edwin or Facundo on an isolated island quite like that very much. You have to have a six of spectacular ability like our old friend Carlos Guerrero in order to play a single like that. Really, both of those guys, Edwin and Facundo, are so much better when they have somebody with them in a double. Doesn't have to be another 6. It could be a 6'8". You can go that look. Where Paxton probably will figure in more once Paxton's actually healthy again.
Yes, and I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to the socials, but one Tanner Tessman has found his way back into the Metroplex. Is there any way we could kidnap Tanner and just force him to come play? Well, like, hey, Tanner, do you need some exercise? Just come spin some yarn for us here for a few weeks till you go back to Venice.
I'd like to re-sign him, buy him back from them, but I don't know that you can. I think his price has gone up to like $5 million.
Why in the world would Tanner Tessman leave what he has going on in Italy to come back here? Sorry.
Who knows? Family or, money, security. I don't know.
I'm sure he's making amazing money and he's living in Venice, Buzz. Nobody I can think of is living a better life right now than Tanner Tessman.
Well, they did almost get relegated, and then they made the playoffs. It was so weird. They were fighting relegation for like 80% of the season and then went on a tear right at the end and got into the playoffs because the league is so tight.
Well, and largely based on how well he was playing too.
Yeah, he's playing really well. The kid's playing fantastic soccer. I just think he would be fabulous to have.
I agree.
In the midfield here. He's progressed. He's playing at a high level. I lament that all of these homegrowns are being sold. We can't be that far, knock on wood, from Jesus not being here. It's just Paxton's the only one that'll stay forever. But I just sometimes it's gonna be a bummer when in a couple of years from now there's not really hardly any homegrowns around. It'll be a bummer, I think.
That's because Inter Miami started a whole trend of everybody going out and just hiring a bunch of 32-year-old European greats.
Well, you don't know how the things are going to break, but between Messi raising the profile of this league, and that means more money, and there's some cap shenanigans that may have to change, and also the World Cup in the next 3 years from now, those two things are going to alter the landscape again. It's probably going to alter the size of the league, the value of the league. The cap's going to go up. There'll be more depth to the rosters, not in volume, but just like it'll be less top heavy. Like right now you have a lot of top end and a lot of bottom end. Well, the rest of the roster will fill in more. It's just going to make it more and more difficult for homegrowns to break in. As the level of the league rises, as you climb the ranks of the top 10 leagues in the world, it'll be more and more difficult for guys to break into the team, and guys that would have broken into the team in the past will not be able to break in the future. And so the homegrown 11 idea is going to start to wither on the vine. You might only see one guy a year, or there might be years you have no guys just because it's just not as doable anymore. North Texas will have to become a bigger avenue for developing homegrowns and selling homegrowns because they're just not going to get into the first team. That's what I think. We'll see.
Look, the next 3 years are going to be fascinating. The sport in this country is going to be bonkers. I can't imagine. I was reading an article today. They were making a big stink about the fact that there's a guy that is spending the money to put a USL 1 team in Brooklyn. And they're making a big stink about that.
What's the stink?
Well, just that, they're making a big deal that they're bringing soccer to Brooklyn. And I'm
that's
like,
cool.
do you guys know what USL 1 is?
Yeah.
like everybody just, I know that everybody's excited about the Messi thing, but this is a long way from, like, I don't think everybody understands the gap between MLS and USL 1.
I think I saw somebody suggested they be called the Brooklyn Italians, which is one of the classic American. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think Brooklyn Italians is already taken, though.
I think it is too, but that would be
I'm
cool.
sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they get a very, very nice a kit design and crest design and all of that taken care of properly.
I just think back to the days, Peter, before this league founded, when you and I were, teenagers with nothing, no pro league. We had indoor, we had the Sidekicks, but we had no outdoor soccer pro. Even in college, no outdoor soccer pro. To where we are now and to where this thing's going to be, and by the time we retire, is just unreal. It's mind-boggling. It'll be hard for people like us to comprehend. People like Paxton was born after the league was founded. He grew up with the league existing. And you and I are like, we lived half our lives without a league at all. So it's like,
I'm sure there's going to be an entire segment on the show Saturday where old man Andy and Peter sit around for a good 10, 15 minutes and just think back to MLS day one and how we never imagined the whole concept. I mean, because essentially, I keep saying this to people, this is potentially, and I use the word potentially very purposefully, this potentially is the 21st century version of Pele coming to America.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things got to happen for it to equal that. But here, just in real time, just to put the perspective of this in real time, I just got a text from a teammate who I play with all the time, who couldn't give two squirts about Major League Soccer. He just doesn't care about it, right? For whatever reason, I don't really ask him, and frankly, I don't care. I just got this text from him. Peter, what's the deal with this Apple TV stuff? When do I need it to watch the best player in the world?
August.
Right. But see, like the fact that this guy cares suddenly about the Apple TV deal, because to me, the biggest thing out of all of this that nobody's really talking about is how MLS Season Pass just went from this very kind of mysteriously questionable, is this thing working or not, to now, holy crap, the value in it changed overnight, because what I think everybody's forgetting about the MLS Season Pass is that not only is he getting a cut of the subscribers, that thing is available globally.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the Discord, was the idea that thing is a worldwide app, and that the exposure that's going to come because Messi's playing here and the amount of people that will add that app, and that leads to economic opportunities for the league and the teams, sponsorship beyond the domestic. Ads in the stuff. I mean, just unbelievable, the reach of that thing. People don't realize the knock-on effect this is going to have. I mean, think about the knock-on effect Beckham has, and we're in a different world now in terms of media. And the fact that Apple thing is worldwide, you're looking at a league potentially, and this is why people are interested in it, right? MLS, because you could become, it ain't now. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you could become a worldwide player with this league. If you play your cards right and you do the right things and you have this Messi and you have this World Cup, there's a reason why people are dropping $300 million, $500 million, whatever the hell the last one was. The next one is to get a team.
Yeah.
It's crazy. People recognize there's a reason why Liga MX is desperately trying to get involved with MLS. The American powerhouse, man, it's just ridiculous. And, hopefully they don't screw it up and ruin the whole thing, because it's unbelievable.
Tim Cook couldn't sign that deal fast enough. Yes, we will give Messi $5 for every subscription we sell after he joins whatever the number is, right? It's going to equal an insane amount of money for Lionel, but it is the value in it for Apple, and the fact, like, if nobody in the United States again signs up for MLS Season Pass, they will well more than make up for it for everybody else on the rest of Earth that does.
You could probably make it up just in Argentina alone.
Right.
And they're no dummies, because you remember that the deal got signed in the first place. They held off until the World Cup got announced. And then, boom, it happened within inside of 2 months it happened.
Yeah.
Same thing. The minute you actually get Messi to agree, boom, look at all this stuff came in with Adidas in terms of a cut of the jersey sales, and already the Adidas website, is already overloaded with Messi to Miami stuff. The Apple TV, the fact that he has a chance to have a cut of the franchise with Beckham. You don't think people are going to play for a Beckham Messi run franchise? It's ridiculous. I mean, it's going to be crazy.
I saw Lawless today tweeting out this whole thing because all the news is they're also going to sign Busquets, and then Suarez was talking about something, and I guess there's other players and Tata Martinez, and then essentially they're building this new Death Star of an MLS team that everybody's going to end up hating. And all I can think of is, oh no, please no. That's totally sounds like NASL version 2.0.
Cosmos, yeah. Angel Di Maria was the other name that was floating around, although I think it was more like they couldn't get it worked out, but it was at least in the conversation. That's what I mean. Like, people will take less money to come here now to play with Messi.
Yeah, but what I'm worried about is that there are enough new owners in this league with enough ambition that they push this thing the extreme, to the extreme, that it creates a bigger problem in terms of imbalance in the league financially.
Well, that's where you have the Hunts for, because they'll tap the brakes on all of it. Right? They'll hold it all back.
Does Clark Hunt have that much power?
Oh, yeah.
You think?
Yeah, Dan Hunt's the leader of the old guard in MLS. There's a bunch of owners that aren't like the new owners. Kraft, probably, right? He runs his thing just to fill up his stadium in the offseason. What's left of the Ann Schultz organization.
I just worry that with the World Cup coming up, that there may be now enough new blood in the ownership group that his power is waning.
Well, he can't stop it, but he'll be able to slow it down. He'll be able to keep it in check. But the other thing is that because of the roster rules, you won't be able to have a Cosmos quite literally. But you'll see other people that'll say, if Messi's willing to go there, that gives the league a little more legitimacy. I know he's 35, and people want to go, retirement league. Dude, Messi won the World Cup 6 months ago.
I know.
People will look at him coming here, and it'll add legitimacy to this league. And people will consider it now that hadn't considered it before. They'll say, well, that's actually a little more viable. Maybe I will go there rather than go to Feyenoord or something. I don't know. Whatever you want to come up with. It's going to change the landscape no matter across the whole league, not just with that one team. Because they know the Cosmos destroyed the North American Soccer League. Those guys are smart. They all know that. Even the new guys know that. There's a reason why they agreed to all these roster rules. That's all ownership level shit. The players would like to get rid of it.
And a closing note on this topic, hat tip to our friend Andrew at Soccer 90 for having the wherewithal for stocking up on Miami jerseys and Messi nameplates, as they, I believe, already have those for sale for anybody interested in those. I don't know if they have the black ones, but I've seen the pink ones. So.
He joked that they've been waiting for a year and a half, just in case they've been ready.
That guy's got his smarts on. Yeah. Absolutely. Please, anybody who wishes, come join Andy and I and this includes you, Dan and Buzz, for the watching party for the Champions League final. Inter and Man City. I'm sorry if the game's a snoozer, because it probably will be, but we'll have a lot of fun anyway. Good food, lots of beer, free entry. It's over in Richardson, and you can also find out all about it on our Twitter account at The Kickaround. So please do that.
Third Degree, the podcast, has been brought to you by Soccer90.com. Shop Soccer90.com for all your soccer needs. FC Dallas, North Texas Soccer Club, U.S. Soccer. They got a bunch of new U.S. stuff this week. They got the Inter Miami jerseys already. Got the Messi nameplates all ready to go. Check it out if that's your scene, if you're into the Messi scene. Soccer90.com. Use code 3rd Degree at checkout. 20% off. Some exclusions do apply.
Dan, thank you much, sir. Excellent time talking to you, and I hope to see you on Saturday.
I'll be there with bells on, or whatever the phrase is.
Okay. I expect you to actually have a physical bell on your body somewhere. Well, where it can be easily seen.
I'd get arrested and deported for that.
And Buzz, be well in the bad weather around your house that has been popping up.
Yeah, I just went through. I will not be able to make your party. I'm going to be in LA.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I got a meeting with the Bobs.
Okay, well, have fun with the Bobs. Nice. And thank you, FC Dallas Curious Fan. We'll speak to you next week on another episode of The Messi. Third Degree, the podcast.
No, he's right. It's The Messi Show.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.